Thank you guys so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. Today we are going to be, well, Quint is going to do like a demo for an absolute beginner prototyping in Miro. So before we talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to give it off to Quint to kind of start off what QBits is as an event as a whole.
Yeah, so QBits was based on my own experience in the SCAD UX community. And SCAD does a really good job teaching you the theory behind all of this UX stuff, why we lo-fi prototype, why we do these certain things, how to do user testing, but they don't really teach you the tools. And I saw a lot of people in the groups that I was put in not know how to use them properly. And there's no one specific proper way to use a tool as long as it gets the job done. But that was the problem, right? We weren't getting the job done. So QBits consists of three main parts. There's the first part where we kind of review that theory. That's the next slide. There we go. That theory. And then after we review that theory, it's going to be accompanied by a live demo by me. I'm going to show you guys how to use it and just some tips and tricks. And then at the end, there's a really good amount of the time dedicated towards just answering your guys' questions. So a little bit of Q&A, working through questions you guys have. If you say, hey, my teacher said I needed to do this, but I have no idea how to do that in Miro. Can you explain that? I will take your guys' questions and work through it with you. So those are kind of like the three different stages for it. There's also a couple different ground rules I want to set just from the very beginning here. The first one is very important. Participation is expected. That can be verbal, but also we have Lara here handling the chat. So if you have any questions, send them to her, let her know, and I'll be able to answer them. She'll kind of bring them to my attention and I'll work them into the presentation, or if it needs a specific dedicated answer, I'll answer that there too. The second ground rule is also very important. I'm not the expert in Miro. I know a couple tips and tricks I'd love to share with you guys, and it is a very good workflow. But there are tons of resources over the community in the UX world, either for Miro specifically or even other tools that we'll talk about. And you might find one is a little bit better for you. Use that. That's okay. That's all right. Again, as long as you use the tool to achieve whatever it is you're trying, that's the goal. I'm just going to be teaching you guys one way to do that today. And then the third rule, they're all very important, but reach out if you have any questions. That includes today, but also in the future. So reach out to my email address, reach out to FLUX. I know they have an Instagram that's pretty active, but definitely feel free to reach out if you have any questions for stuff. That's what we're here for. We love doing that. We love answering questions and being the smart people who get to tell you how to do something you want to achieve. So absolutely feel free to do that. And with that, I think we're going to get into a little bit of theory.
All right. So this is a double diamond. It's usually what the design process is, what we usually use, right? So we start off with the problem and hopefully end in the solution, divide into usually 4 stages of discover, which is all the research. Define is like where you define your target audience, your personas, your journeys, and then you start designing them, design your solution, and then finally deliver it. So now with FLUX and QBits, we understand that we're in a stage where we're kind of finishing off our research and then we're going to move on to our design. So this is where we're at right now. And what we're going to be showing you today, the demo that Quint is going to do, is hopefully will help you guys out during this stage. So now let's talk a little bit about lo-fi prototyping, because that is what we're going to do today, or what we're going to talk about mostly. So think of it like lo-fi music, right? When you think of lo-fi, you're like, chill beats listening to as you're studying. But lo-fi prototyping is actually kind of similar. It's I don't know how to say it. It's like genuine. It's something that's real. So lo-fi prototyping actually means that it's something that is tangible. It's something usually traditionally done with pen and paper. And lo-fi prototyping is something that is pure, and it's something that's like on the baseline of what your product should be. Nothing extra, nothing more. And with that, why is lo-fi prototyping important? A lot of people skip this nowadays, but lo-fi prototyping is still important because First, it's actually really quick to do. You it's something that is quick. It doesn't have to look beautiful. It's something that can be done super quickly. And you just let all of your ideas for your solution flow out into these lo-fi prototypes. Number two is that it's simple. The design itself should be simple. And why is this beneficial for the design process is because when you're actually using this lo-fi prototype to ask for feedback or user test, the users that you're trying to test with won't get too distracted by the design. So their feedback naturally won't be as biased. And the third reason why lo-fi prototyping is important or beneficial is that it's comfy. Because it's something that's genuine and natural and just simple, it's not as intimidating as hi-fi prototypes to users, especially if you're trying to do user tests with everyday users, people who are not really involved in the design process. So lo-fi prototyping is a really good way of getting genuine feedback from people by not intimidating them, and it's super quick and easy to do as well. So here are some examples for those of you who have not seen what a lo-fi prototype looks like. Most of these are just phone screens, so for apps, but lo-fi prototyping can also come in a way of physical products as well. But today we're only going to be focusing on the digital side of things, which is mostly apps. So here are some examples. You see some of these are digital, some of these are sketched out. You can even print out or use actual phone renders and draw them out just to get the sizing correct. So these are just some examples for that. So here are some tools that you can use for lo-fi prototyping. As I mentioned before, traditionally, a lot of people will use pen and paper. That has its own pros and cons. A lot of people also use Figma. Figma is mostly used now for everything: presentations, designs, posters. Another tool that you can actually also use is Miro, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And also another tool is Balsamiq. So I'm showing you a lot of these tools because if you don't know, there are a bunch of options out there that you can use to make these lo-fi prototypes. However, even though that today we're going to be talking about Miro, it doesn't necessarily mean that Miro is the best option for you. This is what we're trying to provide to you, give you the best insight. I personally think Miro is great. Before this QBits segment, I actually didn't know that you can prototype in Miro, so I'm also learning, and I'm already a senior, so it's always good to learn something new. So for those of you who don't know, what is Miro? So Miro is, think of it as if it was a whiteboard, a digital whiteboard that you can use with your team. You can collaborate with anyone, anytime. It's really simple. However, a lot of people kind of look at it as if it's kind of like a sticky note whiteboard. But there's actually a lot of tools and assets that you can use on Miro, such as project planning. You can even make mind maps and stuff like that. So we're going to show you how to use Miro as a lo-fi prototyping tool instead of just something to write down your notes in. So what's really good about Miro as a lo-fi prototyping tool is that there's an efficient transition between your research phase to your design phase. So I know that Seth quickly mentioned previously that he's used Miro for a contextual class before. A lot of people use Miro because it has like this sticky note thing that you can write. So instead of using actual sticky notes, you can write your research points on Miro. So having that on Miro already, if you use it for affinitization, it's easy for you to kind of transition it to a mind map and then transition it to a lo-fi prototype. So it's just nice to have everything in one place instead of switching from application to application. The second reason is that it allows you to not over design your lo-fi. I know it's hard, but you have to be patient in this sense because I know a lot of designers probably have a lot of this idea of what they want their solution to look like. But to be able to lo-fi prototype, you have to really go into the core of the solution itself. And sometimes having visual design, visual assets on your solution and the planning already could kind of stop you from having could kind of hinder you from a more holistic process and could actually kind of not allow you to explore all of the different perspectives of your solution. So not over designing, or if you're trying to not over design, Miro is like the perfect software for you because it only allows you to use some assets that are very simple. the last thing is that it's basically like Legos. So Miro provides you with a lot of assets like icons, search bars, and you'll see later because Quint is going to show you. But you know how in Figma you have to kind of make things from scratch, and I understand that you can use Figma community to kind of use things that people already post, but with Miro it's already plugged into the software itself, so you don't have to re-download everything, you don't have to like look for the right one, everything's the same stroke line, or you can change the colors, and it's just there. It's like good, it's like Legos, you don't have to overcomplicate it, it's just there. So yeah, I'm not gonna bore you anymore with some theory. So I'm just gonna give it off to Quint so he can start the demo for us.
Yeah, guys. And again, if you have any questions about anything that Zara said, definitely feel free to reach out into that chat. We're going to be looking at that for any questions. But let's talk about Miro. After you make your very first Miro board, you're going to jump into something that looks a little bit like this. And it's just this, super daunting white expanse. And we're going to move a little bit into this. So on the left-hand side, we have all of our different tools. And you can see here, the select tool, we have different templates that you can get, text, we have the stickies that, everyone's so hype about, you can type in. So a lot of people have used Miro in this kind of capacity before. But we're going to go all the way down to the bottom here to this little dot, dot, dot. And these are different apps we can use. And we're very particular about this wireframe library. This is kind of where we want to spend most of our time. And when we click on this, it actually puts Miro into lo-fi prototyping mode, which is great. We have a couple different components we can look through here. We have some icons on the left, which is fantastic. Miro actually has really, really great icon library. We'll get into that. But to start out, we're just going to go through each one of these components. I'm going to demo it by making a news site for a phone. So if I'm doing that, I probably want to bring over my little phone frame. See, as I drag that into the middle here, it makes this nice little phone. I can choose different options for it. I can show the physical device or just keep it with the phone itself. I can rotate it if I want. I can change the background color so that it's something a little bit different if that's what I want, but I'm okay with it just being white for now. And we're going to start building our little website here. So first and foremost, if it's an article, we're making this kind of news site. So I want to put a heading up, and this is going to be the title. And your headings are really great. I'm just going to say title goes here. Cool. But what's really great about these headings is that you traditionally start with like an H1, which is like the top level. You only have one of those. And as you click this little down arrow here, it actually goes more than just one. So you get your H1, which is where it starts, and then H2, H3, H4, which is great for just, again, these lo-fi prototypes. It starts with that big one and moves down. And let's say I want a little subheading. So I'm going to use this text here on the left. I'm going to drag this over. Let's say subheading. And then we're going to move that over there. So this is the title of our article. That's our subheading. Maybe there's a little lead there. And then the rest of the body of the article is going to go underneath it. I'm not going to write a whole article. I'm just going to kind of, do one of these guys and keep on going. So we get some good placeholder text. Let's bring that over. Cool, cool, cool. So we have our article. And then now that I have this, I'm going to look at some of these other things over here on the left. So we have a couple different options for buttons. All of these are pretty much the same thing. There's a solid button, the outline button, and then a text link. There are three different ways to accomplish the same thing. So maybe this is like a preview. I'd bring this text link over and we'd say more info. And that looks like a text link that you can click on and go to a different thing. We also have this solid button. So I'm going to bring the solid button over here, and maybe I want them to just subscribe to a YouTube channel. So we're going to say subscribe. Or maybe let's say a newsletter, because there's a news company newsletter. And what's really great about these buttons is that you can transition between different buttons at the same time. So if I go through and I put a bunch of buttons all over my thing and I said, I want that outline button, it's super easy just to change the style of that button between the three different styles that they offer. So that's looking good. And maybe I want a little icon. And so I can set that icon using this little flag button here. If I want to search, let's search video. You can see they have a little bit more than what meets the eye. Let's do for an email. And I think this looks good as a newsletter. And you can see it just adds it there. I don't have to worry about the position. I don't need to worry about anything but the content that's going in there. And that's kind of echoing what Zara said. That's one of the beautiful parts about lo-fi prototyping, is that I'm not really concerned too much with, like, you know, the corner radius of this thing or the color of the background. I'm just trying to indicate a general idea of what this looks like, so that when I go to test it, people understand what it is and say, oh, you know, that's weird. I didn't like that there. You know, you should move that down or something like that. Let's keep this subscribe to newsletter here. And we have another button that we can put on. And this one, I'm going to show you how we can make this a disabled button. So sometimes you want to have a certain button not able to be pressed in your user interface. And so we can actually simulate those states here too. So I'm going to say, I'm a weird person. And we don't want people to be able to click that, right? That's not a good button to be able to press. So under this state here, I'm going to change this to disabled. And you can see how it grays it out. It's basically not a clickable button anymore. And you can do that to any button that you have. And it's a great way to simulate these different spaces. All right. I'm going to ask real quick, does anybody have any questions before we go any further? Are we learning about each one of the little buttons okay, and all the different features so far? Do you have any questions for me on that? Got a couple thumbs up, a couple head shakes. We're good to go. Fantastic. So we're in Miro still. And if we're building out a form, let's say we want to simulate what happens when someone clicks on this subscribe to newsletter. So I click the button. I'm going to hold Option and just drag this thing over to do a duplicate. And I want to keep pretty much this entire page, but I'm going to use a rectangle here. I'm going to use a rectangle here and kind of dim it out. You know how, like, when you go on Siri or something like that, it kind of blocks everything in the background out, and then you get to see that stuff in the front. So I'm just going to make a big rectangle there. And let's gray that out. I'm going to make another rectangle on top, and that's going to be our subscribe window. Let's move this guy over. We're going to have a white backdrop for that, since that's our website theme. And no stroke.
Wait, is there any way to get, like, Lorem, Ipsum, or whatever it's called, for, like, if you just wanted to put, like, random text somewhere, or do we just?
They do have an app library. I can search for Lorem. A good way to do that, if you do you want Lorem Ipsum text, I'm just sharing my Miro frame here, but if you go to lipsum.com, I will show you guys how that looks here in a moment. Ipsum.com. Let's do that. I'm going to show you guys just my whole desktop. Cool. So you can see Lorem Ipsum was up here, and you can, you know, type in, you know, I want that many paragraphs, and you can generate it from here. Or you can do my favorite, which is corporate Ipsum, and that just basically does Lorem Ipsum, but with, like, corporate buzzwords, which I don't know, makes me really happy. So yeah, we could use that stuff instead. And then here, let's get rid of this more info page here, and we'll just paste that in. And that's looking a little bit more like an article, right?
This looks like an actual legal document. Makes absolutely no sense.
Exactly. Leverage agile frameworks to provide. I'm already asleep. It's great. So let's bring in a heading. We're just going to call this our newsletter. Newsletter. Or maybe a better title is sign up. And this is one of the advantages of lo-fi prototyping. I could make a lo-fi prototype with both, and people can tell me which one makes more sense to them. Here I typed in newsletter, and it kind of felt a little weird, so I'm going to type in sign up, and that feels a little bit better. So we're going to do this button here, and this is going to be our confirm button down at the bottom. Let's see if they have anything for yes. Ah, perfect. That's good. And then we're also going to bring in a text field for name. And then another one for email. Cool. Seth, are you listening to lo-fi music as we're doing lo-fi prototyping?
I didn't realize that my mute was still on. This actually literally happened in my programming class, where I was listening to Lana Del Rey like so loud, and I had it like it was going on for like at least like 10 minutes. And so sorry about that, but like maybe you like the vibe. But yes, I am listening.
Yeah, if it's the vibe, lo-fi with lo-fi, I like it.
Oh,
Maybe
that's
everyone
funny.
else can put on some lo-fi prototyping music. It's great.
I thought that was
So here,
actually you, Quint. I was like, oh, he has music to match the theme.
Sorry
it
about
makes
that,
sense.
guys.
You're good. You're good. So we have this
Kind of
this
nice.
name field here. Oh, what's up, Sarah?
It's actually kind of nice to like have a workshop and have like lo-fi music in the background.
We should look into seeing if we can get that in the next one. That'd be good. So in this sign up form, I have indicated that I want the state of this one to be focused. And maybe let's add an icon here. I'll just search for like person. There we go. That's a person. So we can ask for their name and then email. Again, I'm going to do a little icon for mail. That looks good too. And you see that since this one is focused, it's assumed that if you were to start typing, you type into this one. And then I also grayed out confirm because we want to simulate they need to type in their name and email before we can tap on confirm. All right, so that's looking pretty good. If we go on our left side here, we have a drop down and we have search. I think it'd be really good to do a little search bar and then have a drop down where we could filter things. So let's make a search bar here. And this is where we're going to go to this icon section. If we click on this, we have, just so many icons here. If I search for search, for example, we can bring in this search icon. And one of the cool things about Miro is that we can add these little backgrounds to it. So if I like this oval background and I want like a circle for the button, or if I want like a square, I can change the color, which is really nice. And if maybe I decide one of these guys is better, but I don't want to like mess with it, I can go into here and I can search the same thing. Maybe instead of a magnifying glass, I want like a person or something. I could search for that. Maybe the search is like a hike. It's a very arduous process to find an article on our website. So we want to represent it with a hike or something like that. And I can change the size of this circle too, so it fits a little better, and do all that great stuff. Let's do just a normal search icon now. And Bryce, what color should we make the key color for our website? What do you think the best color would be?
Blue.
Blue. I got you, Bryce. So we're going to make all of our buttons blue in honor of Bryce. And I think that is the right decision. All right. Cool. So now I have the search bar, but we want to prototype what it looks like when you tap on the search bar. So let's bring this guy over here. We're going to duplicate another one. And we're going to grab this overlay from the other one over there, kind of using a couple different things that we've used. And let's do this search bar. Ooh, you know what I did? I went one step ahead. Let's not do it like this. Cool. So we typed in search. Seth, what do you want to search for on this news article site? What do you think would be a good thing to search for?
Lana Del Rey.
Did I spell it correctly?
You did.
Fantastic. Okay, results for Lana Del Rey. Is it an E at the end, really?
Yes, it is. I always get confused too, but it's
So if we get out of this, we can go to components. And for this specific search term, let's say, unfortunately, there were no results. Well, I'm just kidding. If we want to go for results for Lana Del Rey, let's go ahead and make a little prototype for what that little card would look like. So I'm going to bring this guy up and let's go ahead and make him a little bit easier to see. And let's say, we did our research and we've determined on these things, what people really need to see the most about an article is the title of the article, a key image to get them interested, a little bit of a sneak preview, and then a couple quick actions for that. And that's kind of where we're going to go for this next part. So let's bring in an image from our little palette on the left there. We can scale this so that's taking up the whole area. And again, I can also make this a little different. So Lana Del Rey is a singer. Are they going to have anything for sing? They do. Cool. Look at that. So we have a little music icon for that because she is a musician. And then we're going to bring this down. Again, do that copy. I'm going to do article title. I'm going to go ahead and click down on the size because I think it would help to have that a little bit smaller, but that's our article title. Let me grab a couple sentences of our body copy from before, and we'll just paste that down. Even that might be a little bit too much, but that is okay. Yeah. That looks good. I'm going to bring in a button for a text link over here. I'm going to say read story. And you can see how really quickly, like Zara was saying, it's like building with Legos, right? I have this idea and I want to see what it looks like on the screen. And so I'm just playing around with it. It's a lot of fun. All right, let's pull this down a little bit more. What's up?
I was wondering if it's possible to have a link within the text frame.
It's a really good question. So this is a little bit different than a link. The reason this is a little bit different than a link is because we can transition between these different things. We can put an icon on it, like if we wanted, you know, that was the icon for read story, and we can change states between enabled and disabled. You can put links on them as well if we have like text here. It's just a feature of Miro that we can paste a link in somewhere. We can do like scadflux.com or something silly like that. And then it'll do that link. So you can also do this, but remember, if you have this kind of link, it's a little different. You don't have all the different controls you have for like the visual prototyping steps. And you know, you can't add like an icon to the side or something that'll automatically be grouped with it. So you can do that, but it's not quite the same thing. I found for this, the best way to do it is just to have all your Miro boards and then actually print them out physically, and then have people go through them and say like, okay, so I tap here, and then you give them the next one that happens when they tap. That's when you actually like get to building this thing. That's usually how I'll end up doing it. Does that make more sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So we have our article title and our body, and we have a link to read the story. And I wanted to add a couple icons for different things. And I can see here we have a little thumbs up. I like that icon. Let's say good story. We want to star it if it's a favorite. And maybe if we want to send it to someone else, we can have an icon for that too. Let's select these guys and make them our blue color. Fantastic. And then we're also going to make them kind of this smaller size, just so that they are a little bit easier to fit. And it's actually going to be easier to duplicate that one into a little bookmark icon. And then we'll also search for share. And I like this one for that. Cool. I know someone said they wanted little hidden features. This is a hidden feature that not a lot of people know how to use. If you select multiple items, you can actually grab this little guy here and it'll automatically stack them and distribute them, which is really fantastic. So if I have like a ton of sticky notes, let's go into sticky mode here, and I'll just type a ton of sticky notes in bulk mode. You can click and drag this guy and it'll automatically sort them for you, which is just so nice. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people, select and then distribute and then select and then distribute. It's a mess. So I definitely recommend that button. Back in article land, I think this is a good kind of, at least a prototype for our article card. So let's duplicate that guy. Ooh. Let's duplicate that guy and bring him down. And our music thing is being a little weird here. There we go. We should probably group them first and then move them down. Cool, cool, cool. Let's say we want to add a filter kind of as our last thing that we do to this page. So let's bring in our component. We're going to bring down a drop down. We're going to scale it so that it makes sense. Bring all these guys down. I'm going to title this filter. And then if you actually tap on it, that's where I want to bring in this overlay. So we're going to kind of do a similar thing over here. One of the great things about Miro is that you can click through objects, which is fantastic. So I just clicked on that filter and brought it up a layer, which was really, really great. And let's go ahead and bring in a rectangle, and it's going to be very similar to our other one. It will just be behind here. Cool, cool, cool. And then we're going to build out our filter. Seth, what's something you think it would be useful to be able to filter by on a...
Her albums, maybe.
Oh, it's
Like
a Lana Del Rey app. It's not a news app anymore. She's taken the whole thing over.
oh gosh.
What about just news stories in general? Think a little bigger.
Like, I don't know. Like color,
Okay.
I don't know.
Like date posted.
What's up, Laura?
I was gonna say like filter by the date it was posted.
Oh, sure. That's a good idea. So we can do by filter by date. So let's bring in a little header. We'll do date and we'll bring it down a few just so that it's not too big. And we'll do yesterday, today, and you can filter by tomorrow's stories too. Why not? So I have these filters here. And these are what's called a radio button. What's up?
They're so good that they have stories for the future.
Exactly, that's the idea. You know, it's like Onion News Network. We're going into the future to bring you today's stories. But you can see here we have a couple different radio buttons. Radio buttons are fun because you can only select one of them. So if I click on one of these, you can see it goes between those different things. You can also click here and say state selected. Or maybe if tomorrow isn't one that you can select, let's do disabled unselected. And that way it indicates to people that, you know, it's not one that you can select. Cool. Another thing we can do is, let's say this news site has a couple different sections. So we have news articles, we have a podcast. Shameless plug, Flux is a podcast. You should listen to it. Lots of really great Flux news, highly recommended. And let's also do some video content. So we're going to take this header, we're just going to bring this over, we're going to do media. And then these are different because they're checkboxes. So you can select as many or as few of these as you want. So we can select all of them if we want, we can select none of them if we want. I think we should probably start all of them on by default, and then, you know, people can deselect them. And kind of like similarly, like in the podcast here, if we like really want people to see our podcast, like I really want you to watch the Flux podcast, we can do disabled check, and that way they can't uncheck it. It's always checked. All right, and down here I have one more thing I want to go over, and that's this little toggle button. You guys have all seen toggles. They look like settings. And so let's do a little toggle here, and we're going to tease them a little bit. We're going to type ads. And we're going to do a disabled on for this one again. So you can't disable the ads. That's kind of the joke there. And I think that this is a good thing for a filter. Let's do stay focused because it's the one that's on top right now. And this is a good filter page. Can anybody think of something else we can add to the filter page to make it a little bit better using some of the things on the left here?
I was going to say categories of like international versus national news, but that's not really.
Okay, no, for sure. We can do another kind of checkbox for that. So we can do international. Oh, can you see how there were typos on the handouts? And then let's do local for the other one. And it makes a little bit more sense to do that as checkboxes, just because you want to be able to do both of them. And let's do check there. Well, there we go. I think that's a good filter for our app. But one thing I'm noticing as I'm going through all of these is that we don't have a little bottom bar. Most apps will have a little bar at the bottom, and luckily Miro allows us to make one of those. We click on this little mobile tabs over here. We can bring it over, and these are super powerful. They are fantastic for all kinds of things. So if we're in these different tabs here, you can add more tabs if you want. You can get rid of tabs. I'm just going to type, actually, let's do settings. And these are really, really useful. So let's say, since we already have like kind of a hierarchy here, the news, podcast, video, let's make different tabs for them. So we're going to do news, podcast, video, and then I like that settings there. Similarly to the other things, we can click on this and then do a little icon. So let's do document, or that's our news. We have a podcast. You're going to select podcast and then change that icon to a little microphone. That looks good. Video. I'm just going to search video, and you can see all these different icons up here. I like this one the best. And then for settings, we can probably just search for gear. There we go. We can also choose which one of these is selected if we highlight that text and say state selected. And maybe if this person doesn't have an account and we want them to log in, we can go to settings here. We can say disabled. So they have to actually make an account before they can go in there. And then we can just bring this into our app. We can scale it a little differently to fit. And then just because that's a little bit weird to try to read, we're going to bring in this rectangle and then just give it a little bit of a backdrop. And that's it. That's how you add mobile navigation to your app, which is really great. Let's bring this guy up. And this guy's behind him. There we go. Maybe make him a little bit thinner. Cool. And we can add that to each page. I'm not going to because you guys kind of get the idea. But cool. So that is at least all of the different components that we can use. We went over each component. We went over all the different icons. You know, there's so many of them, and I absolutely love the style too. That's another really great thing. They're really well done. So I've actually ripped off a few for some of my projects, just at least in terms of concept, because they're so well done. I definitely recommend them. And here we have our little news app. Now, I'll go over questions first, and then we have a decision to make. So first and foremost, does anybody have any questions about anything that they saw, anything that we did? Any clarification? Oh, Zara, go. You first.
Okay. No, he should go first. He should go first.
Andrew, you go.
Quint, I'm curious. I've never prototyped in Miro. I'm curious if having prototyped in Miro before, if you found any like weird quirks about like switching over to Miro, or any like weird aspects of Miro that you like, I don't know, like trying to like, or any parts of Miro that you wish were there for lo-fi prototyping?
Yeah, there's definitely the whole like being able to link things and do like a physical prototype on someone's phone. That's like probably the biggest deficiency. And again, like it kind of keeps you under designing it so that you aren't focusing too much on it. There is the ability to export a frame as a PNG. And so that's what you'll do. You'll just export frames as PNGs and then put those on a document, print it out, cut them out. That's kind of the workflow that we'll talk about here in a minute. I'll just show you guys how to do that.
Gotcha.
So that is, you know, not the best, obviously, because it's not as easy as just sending someone a link. Mm-hmm. Other than that, though, I discovered this during startup. I learned Miro could do these kinds of things. And I was actually a little bit mad because it was so easy and it was so darn simple. I wish I knew about it earlier because it's such a better lo-fi prototyping experience. Once you get into things like caring about the aesthetics, already at that point, you're going out of lo-fi mode. And so you should go to something like Figma or Photoshop or whatever it is that you use for those. But I think earlier on, it's just like, it's really nice to have that lo-fi prototype, like that building block.
For sure. It seems great for paper prototypes. Seems like amazing.
Mm-hmm. And Zara, you had a question as well?
Yeah, but you kind of answered it. But when you export a frame from Miro, will it export the device or just the frame?
Well, let's do it and we'll find out together. I'll go ahead and share my screen again. We'll go back to desktop one. Cool. Can you guys all see Miro? All right.
Yep.
Fantastic. So we're going to click on this frame and you can see all the different information about the frame and, you know, different things you can do, but I'm just going to export it as an image. And I'm going to do the small JPEG. Let's go ahead and export that. It's going to ask me where I want to save it because it's nice. We'll just do QBits phone here. And I will save that to my desktop. And if we go to my desktop and take a look, it doesn't have the device. And this is very nice because you can put this into other things that are designed to work with objects that do not have a device getting in the way, like Figma, and just prototype based off that. That's pretty much every use case I've used something like this for. It's useful to have it without the device in the background. Even something like going through the paper route, it's really good just to be able to, you know, put this into Photoshop or whatever you're using it for, give it a stroke so that you know where to cut, and then, you know, put that into whatever thing you're using. Alejandro, I see a hand. Go for it. What's up?
So you're doing low FIs. Does that imply that there are higher versions of FIs?
Oh, Alejandro, there's so many different FIs.
Huh.
There are lots of FIs. There's low FIs and like mid FIs and high FIs and final FIs and presentation FI. There's lots of FIs, and we're actually going to go over a few of them in different QBits in the future. But yeah, this one is just for low FIs. All right, so go for it.
I always wait till the last minute when they're ready to transition. So for the first one for phone, I was wondering if there's any possibility of like a scrolling function.
Yeah, so interactivity for this is getting a little difficult. So with the phone, in theory, we could, you know, like make it bigger and keep more stuff. Aside from that, you can, you know, select all this stuff and put it into its own frame. Create frame there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it looks like it likes the other frame a little bit better. And so we can bring all this stuff out of the actual device and then put its own frame and then export that as an image. Yeah, but other than that, it does just kind of keep that there inside the device.
Okay. So
yeah, any kind of like on-screen animations or interactions, or like if you tap a button, like if I wanted to prototype it so that this button went to this frame, I'd have to export these as images and then bring it into something like Figma or InVision that has that, you know, linking ability. Even like PowerPoint, probably you could do that with.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool.
Cool. Well, we have a decision to make. We have 10 minutes left. I have an example over here of a Figma prototype that I did before, and we're going to walk through that. But then we want to decide if we want to go through a mind map that I've made already, and I can kind of show you the features of that. Or if you guys have questions about your projects you want me to help you work through, I can totally work through those too. So, you know, keep thinking about that as we go through here. But as we zoom in, you can see we have these, you know, big things, and this is just a mind map. So you can see our big titles are the ones that our research told us people cared most about, that would be more useful to have in our app, these kind of like top level hierarchies. And you'll notice that these guys became our global navigation. So this map feature here is down here. This discover feature here is over here. Stories is over here.
What is a mind map good for?
Exactly this, literally just this, making sure everyone's on the same page and thinking from a hierarchy standpoint, like, okay, cool, where do I want stuff to go? If you've ever done a site map before, it's very similar. It's basically the same thing. When you guys take InfoArc, you'll make lots of these because they are essential for InfoArc. And I think Zara has something she wants to say too.
Yeah, can I add to that just to answer that question a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I think a mind map is good before you like actually design your wireframes, because what you can do is, like, let's say that each color is a part of your nav bar, which is like the bottom tab, and then you can just write in like what goes in there. So it's kind of like a feature list, but like organized in a way where you can visually see like per page what goes where, just like organization. So it's like easy for you to actually like sketch out the wireframes later.
That's great.
It's also really great because Miro is like inherently collaborative. And so you can have everyone working on the same mind map and get the story straight, make sure you all agree on what should go where. And like, you know, for these kinds of things, you know, stories should link back to the story page or something, you know, 3 pages deep in the Discover tab, and make sure everyone's on the same page, and then get to designing it like this. You can see we have our search bar here. We have a horizontal tab, which is very similar to this mobile tabs. It's just, you know, text and underline. Very similar. We can also change this to a vertical tab if we wanted for whatever reason. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of scroll through these and show you guys how we did this. You can also bring in images. So this is an outside image we just took in Google Maps, and we just dragged it and dropped it in there. Just because a map wasn't, we had like a map like this and it didn't feel right. So we dragged and dropped like an image file for that. So that was nice. You can see a couple of our other prototypes. This is another drop down, but we put in little pins there, which is really good. And different stories. This is another filter post. What's up, Sarah?
Did you make that keyboard like thing on your own?
So this is actually just a keyboard icon that I scaled up. So I just took that icon and I just made it big.
Nice.
Put it down at the bottom. Again, this is lo-fi. We love it because it's kind of trash. All right, and you can see this is a good example of the difference between active and passive. We've chosen filled and outline to be the active and passive. But you can see here where that it helps differentiate, this one is the one we've selected, for example. We have a form, you can see all these different text things that we've put in. Yeah, so that's an example of a Miro lo-fi prototype that was made, and it got the job done. What we did is we exported each one of these as frames, and then we brought it into Figma and started designing right based off that. And it gave us a lot of really good, clear direction on where we wanted to go next, which was one of the great things about lo-fi prototypes. So I have this mind map over here. It's 555. I can kind of walk you through what this mind map is and what this app idea is. Or again, like if you guys have any questions about stuff with your classes, that's priority. You guys came here, I want to help you with whatever you guys need help with. So we can try to solve some of those problems together if you'd like. What are we feeling?
Mind map.
All right, we have one in favor of mind map with multiple abstaining. Okay, cool. Does anybody not want to do the mind map? All right, the maps have it. Let's go into that then. So this is an app that I thought would be really funny to do. It's called Squares, and the idea is that Savannah tourism is failing for whatever reason that is. And they have contacted SCAD, FLUX. They said, we need an app to get people to go to the squares, and it's really important. And so what we did is I faked some research, but let's pretend we did the research, and we're just going to go through each one of these different areas. So one of the first tabs is find. So the idea behind this one is that we're able to find different squares and get to them and get information about them, even though we're not there. Everything underneath this is going to have something to do with finding and getting to one of these squares. We also have the tour section. And this is for things surrounding the squares, maybe stories that are really important to the squares, or landmarks that are in the squares, or businesses that are around the squares. So that's the tour section. That comes into play once you actually get there. There's the journal, which helps you reflect on the squares after you've been there. So things like photos, history to show you where you've been, different notes you can take, and then rank, which we'll get to in a moment. Events, so if you're trying to decide which square to go to, this will help you kind of determine if something's happening. And then settings, so of course, important things from you, preferences. But of course, the big one that has the most information is this find. And underneath find, you can see we have this other kind of mini hierarchy. So we have info, which is just the information that we want on every square. When we present that information to the user, what do we want to make sure we have? So title of the square, the time that it's going to take to get there, a photo of the square, a distance, so how long it's going to take, and then a description of the square as well. So remember when we were making our cards for the articles, this is the kind of stuff we're going to put into that card for the square. There's also different points of interest. So I was thinking it'd be really cool under this filter, you could filter it by squares that have food, specific historical significance, filters for parking, which is really important for you to be driving there, and also different shopping experiences. You can also filter by different events, different ones that are close to you, so you can set a radius or open container laws. That was one of the, the research things that was really interesting. People really cared about this open container law and whether or not they could go there. So that's the filter we're going to put in that we uncovered with research. And then in terms of getting there, you can take a car and it'll show you the parking and different rates and locations for it. You can take the bus, you can walk. Or something that I know a lot of people like to do is bike through Savannah. So it shows the elevation, where different bike racks are, and then interesting points of interest for those bikes. Is this making sense so far, at least conceptually in our head? Is everyone kind of following along with how this might work?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Cool. All of these guys we'll probably get to at another time, but I think this is like the really important one. And what I'm going to focus on doing is just bringing in this information card. And we don't need to do it inside a phone. We can just bring in a rectangle and get started. So with this rectangle, again, you might start to see patterns happening. We're going to bring in an image. And let's make that image that big. And this is going to be our key image. Do we have a park icon? We don't. Make sure. That'll do it. We'll make it green because it is a square. So this is going to be our kind of our square title card. So let's go ahead and bring in a heading. We're going to say Whitmore Square. Is there a Whitmore Square? I don't know. I don't think so. And then we're going to do, we got the photo, we got the title. Let's put in the distance. I think it'd be helpful to have that up top. We're going to duplicate that, and we're going to do 2.2 miles. Can you guys also kind of see how utilizing this mind map, it's super easy to just have this checklist for things that I'm going to put in. So we got the distance, we got the photo. Let's say, 20-minute walk. And a short description. And for the description, we're going to go to our favorite corporate Ipsum. We put that in. And something I didn't think about earlier, but now I'm kind of thinking it's good to do. Let's put in a little go button. I think that would be helpful down at the bottom. If they've reviewed all this information, let's put in a little solid button here. Say, get directions. And this looks good for that icon. Cool. So that's how we took this information. And then what would happen is we'd group this, and then this would be on our scroll view of, if you like look for these things under the information under find, you would get, this tab over here, and they would be, set out like that. And you have a couple of them and they would be different, but that's kind of the gist of how to take stuff from here and put it onto an actual visual document. All right, it is 6:01, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. If you'd like, I could keep going all day. I feel like Captain America, but I know that you guys have classes and other stuff that you need to get to. Do you guys have any final questions for me? I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Do you guys have any final questions for me before we wrap up today? Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you so much. We're going to process the recording of this Zoom meeting, and we're going to put it up onto the FLUX YouTube. We're going to revive the FLUX YouTube. It's going to be great. So feel free to reach out if you want to see a replay, or you're like, oh gosh, I know Quint went over like components, but I don't know which one to use. How do you use this? We'll have it all timestamped and everything so you guys can see those. But aside from that, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate each and every one of you. And keep an eye and an ear out, and tell your friends about the Figma one we're going to be doing later in the quarter, hopefully in time with when you guys are actually going into that higher fidelity prototyping, because I think that'll be really helpful for some of you, hopefully. That is it. Thank you guys so much. You guys can head out, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a great week 3.
I hope you and I can work on a project together for once.
100, that would be great. That would be wonderful.
Thank you, Quint. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
You're
Quint.
very welcome.
Thank you so much, Quint.
Quint. Bye.
Big Christo vibes. So thank you, Quint. That was very good.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.